Donald Trump takes a decidedly different tone from President Obama, who in many cases refused to have formal relations with dictators such as Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte. President Trump has invited Duterte to the White House. Trump is shaking up decades of precedent followed by both Democratic and Republican administrations. Terry Szuplat served as a foreign policy speechwriter to President Obama for his entire tenure. Thank you so much for joining us, Terry.
Thanks for having me.
I want to ask you, my first question is, one could argue the Obama administration was almost too apologetic in some of the ways that they handled some of these countries. And so now we're seeing really the pendulum swing into a very unapologetic tone. What's your reaction to that? And to those who say, well, we need to have this type of tone. We haven't had it in such a long time.
Right. Well, I think I would certainly take issue with the fact that the president was too apologetic. I mean, this is one of those great urban myths of that the president went on apology tours. And having worked on a lot of those speeches, I can say that if you look at him, he actually was a huge defender of the United States around the world. He went out of his way many times to speak to foreign audiences. His Nobel speech, for instance, he spoke very strongly about the good that the United States has done around the world. And so he never shied away from that. I think the challenges, and this is something that all presidents have to face, is how do you advance our interests and our values around the world with countries that often have very complex relationships without completely sacrificing our values. And so there's nuance, there's complexity. And of course what we've been seeing in the past 3 or 4 months here is just a complete absence of nuance and complexity. There is just no president has lavished so much praise on so many dictators in so short a time as Donald Trump.
Okay, so one would argue, listen, this is the art of the deal. This is how he has become a successful man. This is how he's negotiated successful deals in the past. And he is applying it to the political world now, not being a politician, elected not as a politician, as a very public history and a very public way of deal-making. So in your opinion, what are they trying to do here?
Well, I think you are correct. I mean, I think he has been very clear that this is how he operates, this is how he works, this is what's worked for him in real estate. And so I think what we're seeing now is sort of a version of real estate diplomacy. And the first rule of this is he's going to go in and he's going to flatter. He's going to flatter his negotiating partner. So he's going to call the President Xi of China a very good man. He's going to call North Korean dictator a smart cookie. I think
you find that ineffective?
Oh, I think the whole world, I mean, I don't think anyone thinks that's effective. I mean, it's one thing to acknowledge that, again, presidents have to, whether they like it or not, often have to deal with unsavory characters all around the world. That's the nature of the business. We live in an imperfect world. But this kind of unabashed, enthusiastic embrace of dictators, I mean, this is actually bad for the United States. This is dangerous for the United States. You know, this whole notion that we support human rights and promote freedom and democracy around the world because it makes us feel good, because it's charity, is completely wrong. I mean, we do these things because it makes the world a safer place. We do these things because it makes the United States safer. You look at Iraq right now, one of the reasons that the United States is in Iraq is because you had a Shia majority government that was oppressing Sunni minorities who then found alliance with ISIS. And so you think about that for a second. One of the reasons that the American soldiers are serving and in some cases dying in Iraq right now is because that government didn't uphold basic human rights and freedoms and dignity for certain people. So we see this is incredibly dangerous for the United States to have an American president just so embracing these dictators like this.
I want to play a quick soundbite from the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and get your reaction so we can have certainly both sides of the aisle.
And in some circumstances, if you condition our national security efforts on someone adopting our values, we probably can't achieve our national security goals. It really creates obstacles.
President Trump ran on an America First platform. He won on an America First platform. He's headed to the Middle East in a matter of weeks. So, you know, if we look at history, Ronald Reagan was criticized very much so when it comes to human rights, and then eventually he was praised for making leaps and bounds toward the ends of administration. Do you think that we need to give this president a chance?
Well, I think we should give every president a chance, and ultimately it's the president's record and words that we judge them on. And so here we are 3 and 4 months into the administration, and what we're seeing is almost a complete absence of any kind of voice for democracy, for human rights, for freedom. You know, Ronald Reagan spoke passionately about the freedoms and rights, including religious freedom, of people in Eastern Europe, in the Soviet Union. George W. Bush spoke passionately about the freedom deficit in the Arab world, in the Middle East. You know, Ronald Reagan spoke of the United States as a shining city on a hill. And one of the things that has made us a beacon to the world is the fact that presidents of all Republicans and Democrats, including Ronald Reagan, spoke so passionately for basic freedoms around the world. So there's a balance. But in this case, we're seeing a complete silence on that front. And that's a real tragedy for the world. It's a tragedy for the United States, and it makes us less safe.
Well, he's certainly on a platform, as I said, on his next trip. So we'll see what comes out of that. Terry, thank you so much.